It is my 70th birthday, a day that should feel like a blessing. The living room is filled with chatter, laughter, and the faint smell of lilies my late wife loved. On the table rests a large chocolate cake, untouched, its candles flickering in anticipation. An ordinary cake, yet tonight it feels like something more, a witness to everything that is about to unravel. In the middle of the room, my son Daniel raises his glass. His voice carries louder than the others. Everyone knows my father has nothing left. He's just worthless. The words strike harder than any blow. The guests shift uncomfortably, and for a moment the laughter dies. I catch sight of the envelope tucked under the cake knife, cream-colored, sealed with a faint trace of my wife's handwriting. Her familiar cursive, "For him," stirs something deep inside me, a reminder that even though she has been gone for 10 years, her presence lingers in this room. My chest tightens, not only from the humiliation, but also from the echo of her absence. Daniel and I haven't truly spoken in 3 years. Ever since he took over the family business, he's kept me at arm's length, dismissing my advice as outdated, my sacrifices as meaningless. I raised him through poverty, through nights when I ate less so he could have more. Now, in front of friends and relatives, he reduces me to nothing. A murmur rises. My daughter-in-law hides a smirk behind her wine glass. My granddaughter Lily shifts uneasily, biting her lip as if she wants to say something but dares not. Silence presses down heavier than the scent of flowers. My heart pounds harder than it should. The doctor warned me of my condition. Humiliation and anger can kill faster than age itself. For a moment I wonder if Daniel knows, or if he even cares. But I steady myself. The cake flickers. The envelope waits. My wife's handwriting calls me to patience. I swallow the bitterness, knowing this night will not end the way my son thinks. Because one truth remains, and that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The cake sits in the center of the table, Brent, and untouched, its frosting glistening under the chandelier light. Normally, the first slice would have been taken by me, surrounded by smiles and the chorus of happy birthday. But now, no one dares approach it. The cake has become something else, a silent judge reflecting the tension Daniel's words unleashed. Guests exchange glances, whispering into their glasses. My old friend Henry clears his throat as if to break the silence, then thinks better of it. My granddaughter Lily stares at the cake as though it holds the answer to a question she's afraid to ask. The air feels heavier than the frosting, roses thick with unease. I trace my fingers along the edge of the tablecloth. The texture reminds me of the old cotton sheets my wife sewed by hand decades ago, back when we could afford almost nothing but still laugh together. That memory, ordinary as it was, carries more warmth than this entire crowded room. Daniel leans back in his chair, satisfied, sipping his wine like a man who has already won. I see myself reflected in his polished shoes, small, hunched, a shadow of the father who once carried him on his shoulders. It is not age that makes me small in his eyes, but his arrogance. The candles sputter, one flame dying early. Superstition whispers that a candle extinguished before its time signals disappointment ahead. My grandmother once told me, a candle that dies too soon means a voice has been silenced. I think of my wife, her voice gone, but her handwriting still near. I wonder if the envelope by the knife carries the words that will break this silence. Daniel's laughter cuts through the room again. Look at this. He gestures at my fraying jacket, a man who can't even dress properly for his own birthday. A few chuckles rise nervously, but most of the guests remain still. My humiliation lingers in the air like smoke, impossible to wave away. I take a slow breath. The doctor once told me stress could be more dangerous than a fall at my age. A fall bruises the body, but words like these bruise the soul, and those wounds never fully heal, yet I refuse to let my son see me falter. Instead, I lift the cake knife, pretending to prepare for the first slice. My hand hovers over the envelope hidden beneath it. The weight of the paper feels heavier than the silver blade. I know the lawyer seated quietly in the corner is watching me. His eyes hold a message wait. The cake waits too. It has become more than dessert. It is the stage where truth will soon be cut open. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. From the far end of the room, a quiet cough breaks the tension. It is Mr. Collins, the lawyer who has known my family for decades. He rises slowly, adjusting his spectacles, his leather briefcase resting by his chair like a coiled secret. His presence here was not announced, not invited by my son, and that alone unsettles Daniel. Guests notice him now, whispering, "Isn't that the lawyer who handled Margaret's estate?" Someone murmurs my late wife's name, carrying through the air like a ghost. Daniel stiffens, though he tries to mask it with another sip of wine. The calm mask on his face doesn't hide the flicker of unease in his eyes. The briefcase clicks open. The sound is sharp, unnatural in the muffled room. Inside, I glimpse the edge of thick envelopes, the kind that carry contracts, deeds, and truths no one wants exposed too soon. For a moment, I wonder if Collins came at my wife's request, or perhaps at her memory's command. She trusted him more than most family members. Daniel laughs nervously. I wasn't aware we'd invited legal counsel to a birthday party. His words are laced with mockery, but his fingers tap the table rhythmically, betraying his nerves. He has always hated surprises. I remember when Daniel was a boy, terrified of storms. At the first rumble of thunder, he'd crawl under the bed, clutching his blanket. I would sit beside him, telling him that thunder was only the sound of clouds arguing. Now, decades later, he stands tall, yet still trembles at the storm. He cannot control the truth. Collins clears his throat. I didn't come for the cake, he says dryly, drawing a ripple of uneasy laughter from the guests. I came because it was time. His words hang heavy. Time for what? The question flashes in everyone's eyes. Lily. My granddaughter leans closer to me, her small hand trembling, squeezes mine beneath the table. Grandpa, she whispers, this feels wrong. Her words echo like an omen. Children see truths adults bury. The lawyer lays a hand on the envelope in front of him. The paper looks ordinary, yet carries a weight that could shatter Daniel's carefully built image. It reminds me of folk tales my grandmother told about letters sealed with wax hidden in attic chests, only opened when the family was ready to face its sins. The past never disappears. It waits. Daniel forces a smile. Surely whatever business this is, it can wait until another time. But Collins shakes his head. No, it cannot. This is Margaret's wish. At the mention of my wife's name, silence floods the room. The untouched cake, the dying candle, the sealed envelope, all of it suddenly feels connected, woven into a larger design. I close my eyes for a brief moment, and I swear I can almost smell her perfume, Wasender, faint but familiar, drifting across the room. It clings to memory, to the edges of Collins' words. She is gone, yet she speaks through paper and ink. Daniel sets his glass down too hard, the clink startling. Enough of this circus. We're here to celebrate, not dwell on old matters. His voice is sharp, but his hands betray a tremor. He knows Collins would not arrive without reason. He fears what lies inside that envelope. I remain silent, watching. Years of patience, of enduring humiliation, have taught me that silence can be sharper than a blade. Tonight, silence is my weapon, and Collins is the one holding it for me. Silence has its own way of speaking. As Collins's words echo in the silence, my mind drifts not to the lawyer nor to the guests, shifting nervously in their seats, but back through the years when Daniel was still my little boy. The hum of voices in the present fades, replaced by the soft clatter of a childhood kitchen, the hiss of boiling rice on the stove, the faint scratch of pencils as he studied late into the night. There was a time when Daniel would run to me with drawings, messy stick figures, houses with uneven roofs, sons that always wore smiles. One day I'll build you a real house, Dad, he used to say, clutching my sleeve. Back then we lived in a cramped 2-room apartment above a tailor shop. I worked 3 jobs, often falling asleep with my shoes still on. But I never told him how much it hurt to stretch every dollar. I wanted him to believe the world was wider than the walls around us. Now he sits across from me, mocking the very man who carried him through those years. The cruel irony cuts deep. I gave him my strength, and he returns it with scorn. My hand drifts toward the table where the envelope rests beneath the cake knife. The texture of the paper is faintly rough, almost grainy, like the kind my wife used to choose for important letters. She believed paper should feel alive under your fingertips, as if the words carried breath. Holding it, I feel her presence again, her quiet persistence, her belief that truth eventually surfaces, no matter how tightly it is buried. Guests murmur. Some of them were there in those lean years, neighbors who lent us sugar or coal. They remember the sacrifices, the nights I skipped meals so Daniel could eat, yet none of them speak now. Silence grips them as firmly as it grips me. I think of the obscure proverb my father once told me, "A son's pride is borrowed gold. When spent too quickly, it leaves only dust." At the time, I didn't understand. Now, watching Daniel smirk as if he owns the room, I realize my father foresaw this moment long before I could. Collins clears his throat again, dragging me back to the present. His hand remains firm on his briefcase, steady as stone. Daniel fidgets, adjusting his tie, though it doesn't need adjusting. For all his bravado, he is still that boy who hated storms. I study the faces around me. My daughter-in-law avoids my gaze, her painted nails drumming against the stem of her glass. Lily's eyes remain locked on me, pleading silently. And the cake, untouched, waits as if time itself has paused, demanding judgment before sweetness can be tasted. A heaviness lingers in my chest, not only from age, not only from the doctor's warnings about my heart, but from the weight of betrayal that is built slowly year after year. This birthday is not just a celebration, it is a reckoning. I look at Daniel once more. For a fleeting second, I remember him as a boy, asleep on my chest after crying from fever. I remember holding his tiny hand at his first day of school, his grip so tight it nearly cut off my circulation. I remember the joy in his eyes when he won his first medal, running across the field to place it around my neck, saying, "This is for you, Dad." Where did that boy go? How did he turn into the man who now sneers at me in front of others? Was it my fault for giving too much or for not demanding enough respect? These questions coil in my chest like smoke. The candles flicker again. One by one, they seem to struggle to stay alive, as though even fire hesitates to breathe in this room. A hush falls heavier than before. Collins's voice cuts through. "Shall we proceed?" Daniel stiffens, his jaw tightening. This isn't the time, he insists, but his voice cracks, betraying his fear. And I, sitting with memories of sacrifices long forgotten, realize something. This is the time. The past is not just memory tonight. It is weapon. It is truth. It is judgment waiting to be spoken. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. My fingers linger over the cake knife, not for the blade, but for what lies beneath it. The cream-colored envelope rests there, half hidden, as though my wife herself had slipped it into place, knowing this moment would come. The handwriting across the front is hers, elegant, looping, familiar. It has been 10 years since I last saw that script, yet I would recognize it anywhere. For him. 2 simple words, but written with such certainty that my throat tightens. The room continues to buzz in muted whispers, but for me, time slows. I trace the edge of the envelope. The rough paper scratches slightly, like the stationery she always favored. She said good paper carried memory, that every stroke of ink became part of its grain. I can almost feel her presence through it, as if her hand still presses against mine. Daniel notices my hesitation, his eyes narrow. "What's that?" His tone is sharp, more demand than question. He doesn't like mysteries he can't control. He leans forward, trying to reach for it, but Collins clears his throat, and Daniel draws back, restrained by the lawyer's silent authority. I slide the envelope out, placing it gently atop the table. Gasps ripple across the guests. A letter at a birthday party seems out of place, almost haunting. I know what they're thinking. What message could reach across a decade of absence? I hesitate to open it. Memories flood me instead. I see her again in the hospital bed, her voice soft yet unyielding. "Promise me you'll protect what matters." I thought she meant family. Perhaps she meant something else. The flap opens with a dry tear, the sound unnaturally loud. Inside lies a single sheet of paper, folded twice, creased with care. I unfold it slowly, my fingers trembling, not from age, but from the weight of expectation. Her handwriting blooms across the page. The ink has faded slightly, but her words are alive. If you are reading this, it means Daniel has spoken cruelly again. He has always confused pride with power. But you must not falter. The truth is not lost. It is waiting for the right moment to breathe. Collins knows where to find it. Trust him. I stop reading aloud, my voice faltering. The room is silent, waiting. My eyes blur as I continue silently to myself. Remember the promise we made at our wedding, that nothing given in love is ever wasted. I left more behind than he knows. When the time comes, you will see. And so will they. A hush settles. My hand trembles slightly as I place the letter back on the table. Every pair of eyes fixes on me. The letter is not a weapon by itself, but it points to something larger, something Daniel does not want revealed. Daniel scoffs loudly, masking fear with arrogance. "What is this? Some melodramatic trick?" She's been gone for years. She had nothing to leave. His laugh is sharp, forced, hollow, yet beads of sweat glisten on his forehead. Collins clears his throat once more, his calm voice steady as stone. "Not quite, Daniel. Your mother left instructions. I have them here." He taps the leather briefcase, the click of its lock echoing like thunder. The guests murmur louder now, leaning forward, hungry for answers. My granddaughter Lily's eyes shine with tears, though she doesn't fully understand. She only senses that her grandmother is still speaking, even from beyond the grave. A strange calm washes over me. For years I feared being forgotten, diminished, erased by my own son's contempt. But this letter, with its familiar handwriting and steady conviction, proves otherwise. She remembered me. She prepared for me. She trusted me. My wife once said that truth was like a seed buried deep in soil. It might sleep for years hidden from sight, but one day, under the right light, it would break through. Tonight, her seed has cracked the ground. Daniel's voice rises again, desperate. This is nonsense. He's making this up. None of this matters. But even he knows the tide has turned. His words are weaker now, unconvincing. I fold the letter carefully, sliding it back into its envelope, treating it as though her hand still warms it. This is no ordinary paper. It is a bridge across time, a reminder that love and foresight outlast betrayal. I look at Collins, who nods, once firm, resolute. The room leans closer. The truth is circling us like a hawk ready to strike. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. As I slide the letter back into its envelope, I notice a movement across the table. My daughter-in-law, Claire, lowers her glass of wine too quickly. A few crimson drops splash onto the white tablecloth, blooming like small wounds. She dabs at them with her napkin, but her eyes avoid mine. For a second, I see something in her expression, not just discomfort, but guilt. It is a small shift, yet unmistakable. For years, she has played the part of the polite, loyal wife, smiling at family gatherings, nodding along to Daniel's boasts. But tonight, her hands tremble, and her gaze darts toward my son as if seeking permission to breathe. Guests lean closer, whispering among themselves. The tension has grown so thick that even the chandelier above us seems to flicker more erratically, as if the house itself senses what is about to unfold. My fingers linger on the envelope, its weight pressing into my palm like a reminder watch carefully. Claire finally speaks, her voice softer than usual. Maybe this isn't the right time, she says, attempting a weak smile. But her tone lacks conviction. Daniel shoots her a look sharp enough to silence her. It is the look of a man whose secrets are slipping one thread at a time. I recall an old superstition from my village that when a candle burns unevenly at a family gathering, someone in the room is hiding a truth. I glance at the birthday cake again. Half the candles lean toward the melted frosting, their flames stuttering, struggling to survive. The symbolism isn't lost on me. Collins remains calm, his fingers resting on the briefcase. He doesn't rush. Lawyers rarely do. They understand that silence can break a man faster than a question. Daniel fidgets, tugging at his cufflinks. Claire sips her wine again, though her glass is nearly empty, her throat working too fast. I wonder how much she knows. Has Daniel shared his plans with her? Or has she simply learned to keep quiet to benefit from his arrogance? A memory surfaces the first time I met her. She had shaken my hand with unusual firmness, her eyes bright with ambition. Daniel tells me you've built everything from nothing, she said, and I smiled, proud. But I see now the way she studies the floor, refusing to meet my gaze. Somewhere along the way, that admiration turned into complicity. The room grows warmer, though no one moves. A cousin coughs nervously. A chair scrapes. Claire presses the napkin harder into the tablecloth, as if erasing the stain will erase the truth pressing against her chest. Daniel, impatient, raises his voice again. This is ridiculous. A letter written a decade ago? We all know he has nothing left. My father is clinging to scraps of the past. His words are louder now, but shakier. His confidence wanes like the candle's light. I study Claire once more. She flinches at his tone, and her knuckles whiten as she grips her glass. For the first time, I realize she is not only complicit, she is afraid. Not of me, not of Collins, but of Daniel. Fear leaves a trace in the body that cannot be hidden. And hers is written clearly now. Guests notice it too. Murmurs ripple through the room like a spreading fire. The balance is shifting. What once seemed like Daniel's stage now begins to feel like his trial. I let the silence stretch heavy and unrelenting. My wife used to say silence was a mirror. It forces people to see themselves more clearly. Tonight, Claire cannot bear to look. She bows her head, her napkin twisting in her fingers like a confession waiting to escape. Collins clears his throat again, his calm voice slicing through the murmurs. There are matters in this briefcase that will change what you believe to be true. His eyes flick briefly toward Claire before returning to Daniel. That single glance is enough. Claire shifts uncomfortably, her mask cracking just a little more. I lean back in my chair, studying them both, the envelope in my pocket. Collins's briefcase on the table, Claire's trembling hands, Daniel's false bravado. All the pieces are here. The truth is circling closer, and I sense that the first real crack will not come from Daniel, but from her. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Daniel rises suddenly, his chair screeching against the floor. The sharp sound makes several guests flinch. He lifts his glass again, his smile too wide, too forced. Friends, family, he announces, I think we should all remember why we're here. To celebrate a man who has given, well, nothing. A ripple of uneasy laughter spreads, the kind that comes not from amusement, but from fear of silence. He raises his glass higher, his voice stronger now, each word a dagger aimed at me. My father, he says, pausing for effect, has spent 70 years chasing small dreams, making small sacrifices, and in the end he has nothing to show. No wealth, no legacy, just stories. The words hang in the air heavy as chains. I feel the sting of them not because they're true, but because they twist my truth into humiliation. I gave him my everything, my youth, my strength, my nights of hunger. And yet here in front of family and friends he calls me worthless. I catch the reflection of the cake knife in the chandelier's glow. For a strange second I think of how ordinary objects carry power. A knife to cut sweetness. A letter to cut lies, which will wound deeper tonight. Claire sits rigid, her eyes darting toward him, then back down. She doesn't smile now. The smirk she wore earlier is gone, replaced by tension. Her knuckles press white against the glass stem. Guests glance at her, then at me, then back at Daniel, as if gauging whose side to take. I remember a fact I once read in a psychology journal. Public humiliation registers in the brain the same way physical pain does. Tonight I feel that truth burning in my chest. The ache of betrayal can rival any illness. My doctor warned me of stress, but no medicine can soothe this kind of wound. Still, I remain seated, my hand calmly resting on the envelope. My wife's handwriting feels alive through the paper. It steadies me. She knew this would come. She prepared me for this very moment. Daniel smirks, sipping his wine. You see, my friends, he couldn't even manage his own finances. I had to take control years ago. Without me, he'd be penniless, forgotten. He gestures broadly, his voice dripping with false pride. I built everything from the ground up. Not him, me. The guests are silent now, not because they agree, but because the cruelty is unbearable. Silence itself becomes a verdict. My granddaughter Lily grips my hand tightly, her small fingers trembling, her eyes brim with tears. "Don't let him do this, Grandpa," she whispers. Her innocence cuts through the tension sharper than Daniel's words. I take a slow breath, letting the silence grow. In folk tradition, silence at a public insult was considered a curse against the speaker, not the listener. It meant the gods themselves were watching, letting the liar's words trap him in his own net. Tonight, I cling to that thought. Daniel mistakes my silence for weakness. He steps closer, leaning over me. "Tell them, Father. Tell them how you've failed, how you've wasted your life." His breath reeks of wine, his voice full of venom. The humiliation is complete. He wants me to break in front of everyone, to shrink into nothing. But I do not answer. I look past him to Collins, who has not moved his hand, still resting on the briefcase. And then to Claire, whose lips press into a thin line, her body taut with secrets she cannot contain much longer. Daniel straightens, raising his glass again. To a man who has nothing, he declares loudly and will leave nothing behind. He drinks, his head tilted back, confident, smug. The guests lower their eyes. No one claps, no one toasts. The silence that follows is louder than any applause. Inside, the humiliation burns, but beneath it, something steadier grows, the knowledge that the truth is near, closer than Daniel realizes. He thinks he's crushed me, but he doesn't know about the letter, about Collins, about the will that still breathes. I glance at the cake again, untouched, the candles melting into twisted shapes. A birthday meant to mark my years has become the stage for my son's cruelty. Yet even in this moment of shame, I know the tables will turn. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. As Daniel basks in the hollow silence after his cruel toast, I lower my eyes, letting them rest on the mantel behind him. There, tucked among the decorative vases and porcelain figurines, stands a framed photograph that I almost forgot existed. It is our family portrait taken decades ago when Margaret was still alive and Daniel was no older than Lily is now. The photograph draws me like a magnet. I rise slowly from my chair, ignoring Daniel's mocking smirk, and step toward it. The guests murmur, curious. The frame feels cool in my hands as I lift it, its weight more than glass and wood. It holds memories, promises, fractures. In the picture, I stand with Margaret at my side, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Daniel, no more than 12, leans against me, his smile wide and unguarded. Back then, his eyes still carried innocence, but tonight those eyes, grown older and colder, stare at me with disdain. I turn the frame toward the room. "Do you remember this?" My voice is steady, though my heart pounds against my ribs. The guests lean in, squinting. Daniel rolls his eyes. What's this supposed to prove? I trace my finger over Margaret's image. The photograph smells faintly of old paper and dust, yet the memory it holds is fresh. That day, Margaret had insisted we take the picture. "We need to remember who we are," she'd said. Her words echo now, almost prophetic. But as I study the image closer, I notice something I had never paid attention to before. A small folded note tucked behind the glass at the back of the frame. My hands tremble as I pry open the stand. A sliver of yellowed paper slips free and lands on the table with a whisper. Gasps ripple through the room. Daniel stiffens. "What is that?" His voice sharpens, but his eyes betray panic. I unfold the note. It is Margaret's handwriting again, unmistakable. My breath catches. The ink has faded, but her message is clear. "For the day he forgets kindness, show him who he truly is." The words pierce me. They pierce Daniel more. His confident mask flickers a crack, spreading across his arrogance. He steps forward, but Collins raises his hand calmly. Let him finish. The guests whisper louder now. Some glance at Daniel, others at me. The photograph, once a decoration gathering dust, has become a mirror reflecting the truth. I lift it higher. This picture was taken when Daniel still believed in family, when he knew love mattered more than wealth. I let the silence hang. Tonight he's forgotten. But Margaret didn't forget. She left reminders everywhere. Claire shifts uneasily in her chair, her eyes darting between me and Daniel. She grips her napkin so tightly the fabric tears. Something inside her is unraveling. Daniel snaps, his voice breaking. "This is absurd. You think an old photo and some scribbles mean anything?" "He's manipulating you all." His words come fast, desperate, no longer controlled. But I notice the guests. Their eyes no longer admire him. They see the cracks. The photo in my hands, the note in my fingers, the tremor in his voice, it all tells a story louder than his lies. I remember an obscure saying from a history book I once read: "A portrait hides nothing from time. It whispers truths to those who dare to look." Tonight, Margaret's portrait has whispered louder than Daniel's boasts. I press the note back against the glass, sliding it carefully behind the photo where it belongs. The frame feels heavier now, as though it carries not just memory but judgment. Turning to Daniel, I meet his gaze. "This picture proves you weren't always like this. You were once a son I could be proud of." My voice softens, though the weight of betrayal lingers. "Somewhere along the way, you forgot. But Margaret didn't. She knew you might." The room falls silent. Daniel stands frozen, his hand gripping the edge of the table. His face, flushed moments ago with triumph, now pales under the weight of his mother's words reaching him from beyond the grave. And yet deep inside me, I know this is only the beginning. The photograph is not the final blow. It is just another seed planted long ago, finally breaking through the soil of this night. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The photograph still rests in my hands, its weight heavier than stone. Guests whisper among themselves now, their eyes darting between me and Daniel. For years, I was the one overlooked, ignored, even pitied. But tonight, the balance is shifting one detail at a time. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch a small but telling exchange. Daniel leans toward Collins, the lawyer, his lips moving quickly. It is not loud enough for the others to hear, but I've spent a lifetime reading his expressions. His jaw tightens, his brow furrows, and his fingers twitch against the table like a man cornered. Whatever he says to Collins is sharp, urgent, even pleading. Collins does not flinch. He simply raises a hand, calm and steady, as though to remind Daniel he is not the one in control here. That gesture alone sparks murmurs among the guests. They notice too. A lawyer at a birthday party, seated with sealed envelopes and a briefcase full of secrets, does not appear without reason. Claire notices as well. She stares at the briefcase with wide eyes, then at Daniel, then back down at her glass. Her silence feels louder than any accusation. I wonder what she knows. A marriage built on appearances often hides more than love. I set the photograph gently back onto the mantel, my fingers lingering on Margaret's smile. In the quiet that follows, I remember something she once told me when Daniel was just a boy. When someone whispers behind your back, it means the truth is standing too close to be spoken aloud. At the time, I thought she was only warning me about gossip. Now I realize she was teaching me to watch for the small betrayals, the glances, the whispers, the pauses. Daniel straightens, clearing his throat loudly as if to drown suspicion. My father's making a spectacle out of scraps of paper and dusty photos. Don't be fooled. He has nothing. His voice cracks slightly on the last word. He's losing ground, and he knows it. A cousin at the back mutters just loud enough, "If he has nothing, why's the lawyer here?" Heads nod. The tide turns quietly but firmly. Daniel slams his glass down, wine spilling across the tablecloth like a spreading wound. Because my mother was sentimental. She wrote things that don't matter anymore. We're wasting time. His words tumble too fast, betraying panic. Collins finally speaks, his tone measured. "It matters, Daniel. Every word Margaret left matters. And your father knows this. His calmness is like steel." The guests lean closer, hungry now. For a moment, I let the silence stretch again. Silence has become my ally tonight, stronger than any defense I could make. My son fills the emptiness with his anger, and in doing so, he exposes himself more than I ever could. I recall a folk belief I once heard: when two people whisper in a crowded room, it binds them together in suspicion, no matter what they say. Tonight, Daniel's hurried words to Collins have done just that. Every eye now watches him with doubt. Lily tugs at my sleeve, her young voice trembling. "Grandpa? Why is Uncle Collins so calm when Dad is so angry?" Her innocence slices through the tension, and I realize she has voiced the very question on everyone's mind. I squeeze her hand gently. "Because the truth doesn't need to shout," I whisper back. Daniel hears me. His face flushes red. He opens his mouth to lash out again, but the room has already shifted. Guests whisper, Claire hides behind her wine, and Collins sits steady, unshaken. For the first time in years, I am not the one on trial. He is. And in that realization, something inside me steadies. Humiliation still burns, but beneath it grows the certainty that Margaret's plan is unfolding exactly as she intended. One whisper at a time, Daniel is losing control. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Daniel cannot stand the shift in the room. He feels it. The whispers, the doubtful glances, the way Collins sits calm while he paces in fury. His mask of confidence begins to crack, and rather than hold his tongue, he lashes out harder. "You think this old man deserves your pity?" he sneers, jabbing a finger at me. "He's nothing but a burden. He wasted his life chasing failures and now clings to scraps of paper as if they mean something." The words cut deep, not because they are true, but because they are spoken by the very son I once carried on my shoulders. My breath grows heavier. The doctor warned me that stress could strain my heart, but Daniel doesn't care. His cruelty is sharper than any disease. I see guests recoil. "One old friend of mine?" Henry shakes his head and mutters, "That's no way to speak to your father." His voice is low but loud enough for Daniel to hear. For the first time, resistance begins to rise in the room. Daniel turns on him instantly. "Stay out of it. You don't know what he's really like." His voice cracks a sign of desperation. He swings his gaze back at me, eyes blazing. "Tell them, Father. Tell them how you lost the business. Tell them how you almost left us with nothing. Admit it, you're worthless." The humiliation is public, brutal. I remain seated, gripping the edge of the table. The veins in my hands stand out against my skin, a reminder of all the labor I endured to build the very foundation he now stands on. I remember a detail from an article I once read: words of humiliation can trigger the same chemical response in the brain as physical wounds. My body proves it true tonight. My chest tightens not from illness alone, but from the crushing weight of betrayal. Yet even as pain ripples through me, something steadier rises. Margaret's letter, tucked safely back in its envelope, whispers to me from my pocket, "Trust Collins." Her foresight is my armor. Daniel leans closer, lowering his voice but sharpening its edge. "No one respects you anymore. You're a relic, a shadow. Why don't you just fade away and stop embarrassing us?" The words hang in the air, poisonous. A hush falls so complete I hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. For a moment, even the candles seem to lean away from his venom. Claire shifts uncomfortably, her napkin twisting again between her fingers. She looks at me once quickly, then back at her glass. Her silence condemns her as much as his cruelty does. I remember an obscure superstition in some villages. People believed that when a son cursed his father, the curse did not fall on the father, it fell back onto the son threefold. I cling to that thought, not out of spite, but as a reminder that truth eventually collects its debt. The guests whisper louder now, some openly shaking their heads. A cousin murmurs, "Too harsh," while another mutters, "This isn't right." The tide that Daniel once controlled is slipping further from his grasp. Still, he presses on, voice rising. "Look at him. Sitting there like some saint. He's nothing. Without me, he wouldn't have a roof over his head. You should all thank me, not him." His voice echoes against the walls, ugly and bitter. And yet in that ugliness he reveals more than he hides. His arrogance, his fear, his greed, all of it spills into the open. I do not answer. I let silence stand as my reply. Silence is heavier than any argument. It draws attention not to my weakness but to his cruelty. It forces the room to choose sides. Lily squeezes my hand again, her voice trembling. "Grandpa, don't listen." Her words, innocent and pure, drown out Daniel's venom in my heart. They remind me that love still survives in the cracks he cannot touch. Daniel slams his palm on the table, rattling glasses. Say something, he roars, but I do not. My wife's words. My granddaughter's touch, the lawyer's calm presence, they speak louder than I ever could. And as the silence stretches, I see it in his eyes, fear, not of me, but of what is about to be revealed. Silence has its own way of speaking. Daniel's shouting still echoes in the silence he tried to dominate. My chest tightens, but I keep my composure. If I falter now, he wins. My hand slips to the inside pocket of my jacket, brushing against a small, worn object I've carried for years. A bank book. Its cover is faded, the once blue leather now closer to gray edges frayed from time. To anyone else, it looks worthless, the kind of thing you'd toss in a drawer and forget. But this book has weight, not just in money, but in memory. It is a record of sacrifices carefully stored away, each deposit a piece of myself, saved for a day like this. Daniel doesn't know it exists. He always assumed I was careless, penniless, clinging to nothing. That was his mistake. My father once told me, the richest man is not the one who shows his gold, but the one who hides it until the right moment. I never understood that fully until now. I don't take it out yet. Instead, I run my thumb along the worn spine, letting the knowledge steady me. The truth is close, but not yet. Timing matters. Collins catches my eye and I see a faint nod. He knows. He's known all along. Daniel continues to rant, pacing the room like a caged animal. He has nothing. He's been living off my generosity for years. Without me, he'd be on the streets. His words grow more desperate, louder, but each outburst weakens him further in the eyes of the guests. Claire lowers her gaze, shame pooling in her expression. She knows more than she admits. Perhaps she has seen traces of my careful savings. Perhaps she's suspected, but fear has kept her silent. I glance at the untouched cake. Its candles have burned halfway down, wax dripping into thick pools. In some old traditions, melted wax was believed to capture truth. Once hardened, it could not be reshaped. Tonight, every drip feels like another piece of Daniel's mask solidifying into something ugly, irreversible. The bank book presses against my chest. I remember nights decades ago after long shifts at the factory slipping a few bills into the account. I remember Margaret's smile when I told her we should keep it secret, not for pride, but for protection. She agreed, whispering, "One day this will matter more than you know." She was right. She always was. Henry, my old friend, clears his throat from across the table. "Daniel, enough. You're speaking to your father." His voice trembles with indignation. The guests murmur in agreement now. The tide has turned completely. Daniel slams his hand down again, but this time the sound does not silence the room. It only draws more glares. His power slips through his fingers like sand. I press my hand against the bank book once more, still hidden. I could pull it out now and end his charade in an instant. But part of me knows it must come at the right moment, not forced by anger, but revealed by truth. Collins will know when. For now, I hold it close like a hidden blade waiting in the shadows. My heart beats slower, steadier. The humiliation still stings, but the knowledge of what I carry softens its edge. I am not powerless. I never was. Daniel glares at me, expecting me to collapse, to lash out, to crumble under his cruelty. Instead, I sit calmly, my silence heavier than any rebuttal. And with each second, the pressure shifts back onto him. A thought comes to me, an obscure belief I once heard from an old farmer. A locked chest rattles loudest when it's empty. Daniel's rage is his rattling, and my silence is the locked chest that holds what he cannot see. The guests lean in closer to me now, their sympathy visible. Even those who once believed Daniel's boasts now watch him with doubt. He has exposed himself, not me. I rest my hand firmly over the hidden bank book, feeling Margaret's presence in every frayed edge, every faded page. I know the moment is coming soon when its truth will be revealed and Daniel's words will turn to ash. For now, I wait. The stage is set. The knife, the letter, the photograph, and soon the bank book, each piece in its place like instruments waiting for the conductor's signal. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The room is heavy with Daniel's rage, yet beneath the noise a small hand tugs at mine. I glance down to see Lily, my granddaughter, her wide eyes shimmering with unease. She leans closer, her voice so faint it trembles against the noise. "Grandpa, don't trust what Dad says tonight," she whispers. "Something's wrong. I heard him on the phone." The words freeze me more than Daniel's shouting ever could. My heart jolts. Lily is only 14, too young to carry such burdens, yet her face is pale with the weight of truth. I lower my head, pretending to adjust my jacket so Daniel won't notice our exchange. "What did you hear, Lily?" I murmur back. Her grip tightens. He said you'd never see it coming. He told someone that once the lawyer came, he'd make sure the papers disappeared. She swallows hard. He said you'd be gone soon. The chill that runs through me is colder than any winter night I've endured. My son's cruelty was one thing, but plotting behind closed doors, anticipating my end cuts deeper than words. For a moment my chest tightens, fear mingling with anger. I remember an obscure folk belief from my childhood. When a child speaks a warning, it is said to come from the ancestors carried through their innocent lips. Perhaps Margaret herself speaks through Lily now, reminding me to stay vigilant. I squeeze her hand gently. "Thank you, my dear," I whisper. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." Daniel notices us, his eyes narrowing. "What are you whispering about?" he snaps. His voice echoes too loud, his insecurity laid bare. Guests turn toward him, curious, unsettled. "Nothing," I answer, calmly leaning back. "Just a granddaughter telling her grandfather happy birthday." The lie slides easily, but the truth burns beneath it. I feel the bank book pressing against my chest, Collins's steady gaze across the table, and Lily's trembling warning in my hand. The puzzle pieces are aligning faster now. Daniel scoffs, but the suspicion doesn't leave his face. He drains the rest of his wine, gripping the glass so tightly I fear it might shatter. Claire shifts again, her eyes fixed on him now, her unease impossible to hide. Collins clears his throat, cutting through the tension. "There are matters we must address tonight. Margaret left instructions, and I intend to honor them." His voice is calm, but it carries authority. The guests stir, restless, curious. The atmosphere has changed. It is no longer Daniel's stage. It is Collins's courtroom. Daniel's jaw tightens. This is a birthday, not a trial. His laugh is sharp, brittle, but even as he speaks, I see sweat beating at his temples. I lean toward Lily again, whispering just for her, "Stay close to me." She nods, her small face determined despite the fear in her eyes. Children see more than we give them credit for. Tonight, she has seen the cracks in her father's armor long before anyone else dared to. I let silence take hold again. Silence has been my shield tonight, and now, thanks to Lily, it is also my weapon. Daniel rages, but in his fury, he exposes himself. The more he speaks, the more the guests see what I have long endured. The candles on the cake sputter, their flames bending, as if bowing under an unseen weight. Another one dies, smoke curling upward like a spirit leaving the room. My wife used to say smoke carried messages to the heavens. Tonight, I wonder what message this smoke carries back to her. Lily's words echo in my mind. "He said you'd never see it coming." Perhaps Daniel thought he had silenced every trace of truth. But Margaret's letter, the photograph, the lawyer's presence, and now Lily's courage. They are all threads weaving together into a net he cannot escape. I straighten in my chair, my heart steadier now. The humiliation still lingers, but the whispered warning has shifted something inside me. This is no longer just about defending my dignity. This is about survival and justice. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Daniel slams his empty glass on the table and waves for another. His cheeks are flushed now, not only from the wine, but from the heat of losing control. The guests glance uneasily at one another, torn between leaving and staying for what feels less like a birthday and more like a spectacle. When the server hesitates, Daniel snatches the nearest bottle himself, filling his glass, carelessly spilling dark red across the white cloth. The wine bleeds like a wound. He doesn't notice, or maybe he doesn't care. Rising again, he raises the glass high, his voice cutting across the murmurs. A toast. His grin is too wide, his eyes burning with something between anger and arrogance. To my father, the man who gave up everything and achieved nothing. The words drop like stones into a pond. No one claps. The silence is broken only by the faint hiss of the candles melting into themselves. Daniel's laughter fills the void. "Come on, don't be shy. Let's all celebrate the man who failed, who had to be carried by his son. Without me, he'd be forgotten already." A cousin at the far end mutters, "This isn't right." Another guest coughs awkwardly. Still, Daniel pushes on, mistaking silence for permission. He lifts his glass higher. Here's to a father who couldn't manage a business, who couldn't even keep his wife from worrying about money. She left letters instead of gold. His words drip with venom. At that, my heart jolts. He knows about the letters, not this one perhaps, but others. I see it in his smirk, the way he savors the reveal. Claire stiffens her napkin, frozen mid-twist. Collins narrows his eyes but says nothing yet. Daniel sways slightly, drunk not only on wine, but on his own cruelty. "She told me once," he says, laughing bitterly, "that you always believed in saving something for tomorrow." Well, guess what? Tomorrow came and you still had nothing. Nothing. The guests shift uncomfortably. Some lower their heads, others stare at him in disbelief. A family friend mutters under his breath, "He's gone too far." I remain seated, but inside me a storm brews. My wife's voice echoes through my mind. When he forgets kindness, show him who he truly is. Daniel drains the glass, slamming it back down. "So let's drink," he declares, his words slurred but sharp, to the man who will leave this world as empty as he came into it. The room gasps. Even Claire flinches. The words, cruel as they are, expose more than Daniel intends. They reveal his obsession with inheritance, his hunger for control, his belief that I am already half buried. I notice Lily's face turn pale. She clutches my arm tighter, whispering, "Don't listen, Grandpa." Her small voice steadies me more than she knows. Daniel raises his glass again, the wine trembling inside. "Here's to me the son who saved him, who built everything, who deserves everything." His arrogance fills the room like smoke, suffocating. Yet in that smoke, truth flickers. The more he claims, the more the guests see the cracks. His toast, meant to humiliate me, has only revealed his greed. I remember a detail from an old anthropology book I once read. In certain cultures, toasting was sacred. Words spoken over raised cups were believed to bind the speaker to truth. By that rule, Daniel has cursed himself tonight. I glance at Collins. He hasn't moved, but his eyes glint. He knows the moment is near. The briefcase at his side seems to hum with the weight of what lies inside. I let Daniel's words settle into the silence, not responding, not rising to defend myself. Silence once again speaks louder than anger. The guests do not toast. No one raises their glass with him. Daniel stands alone, his arm raised, his face flushed, his smirk brittle. The sound of his own breathing fills the room. And I know with certainty now that the tide has turned. His shocking toast has not humiliated me. It has exposed him. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. Collins clears his throat, the quiet authority in the sound slicing through the aftertaste of Daniel's cruel toast. All eyes shift toward him. He hasn't moved much tonight, but now he straightens, his presence filling the room more than Daniel's shouting ever could. Slowly, deliberately, he lifts the leather briefcase onto the table. The sound of it settling on the wood is heavier than any word spoken so far. Daniel stiffens. His smirk fades into a tight line. "There's no need for this." He snaps, his voice brittle. "We came here for a birthday, not for theatrics." Collins doesn't answer him. Instead, he unclasps the locks on the briefcase. The click-click echoes like gunshots in the silence. Guests lean forward in their chairs, their curiosity palpable. Claire's hand freezes on her glass. Lily's small fingers grip mine tighter. The flap opens, and Collins withdraws a thick envelope sealed with red wax. The kind of envelope that carries weight beyond paper, a message preserved, untouchable, undeniable. Margaret's name is written across the front in her familiar script. My breath catches. Daniel lunges forward. "That's private." His voice trembles. "You have no right." Collins raises a single hand, stopping him mid-step with nothing but calm authority. "On the contrary, Daniel, I have every right. This was entrusted to me by your mother. She instructed that it be revealed only when certain conditions were met. Tonight, those conditions have been fulfilled." The guests murmur their whispers, circling Daniel like vultures. He looks around, searching for support, but finds none. Even Claire lowers her eyes, unwilling to defend him now. The wax cracks as Collins slides a letter opener under the seal. The tearing sound seems impossibly loud, every fiber of the room straining toward the truth. Daniel grips the back of his chair, knuckles white as though he could physically hold back what's about to be revealed. Collins unfolds the papers slowly. His eyes scan the top sheet, then he clears his throat. "This," he begins, his voice steady as Margaret's legal statement written and signed 10 years ago. It concerns the inheritance and the disposition of her assets, as well as her wishes for her husband and her children. Gasps ripple through the guests. Someone whispers inheritance. Another leans closer, eager. Daniel shakes his head violently. "This is a trick. She would have told me." Collins ignores him. He adjusts his glasses and continues reading. Margaret made it clear that while Daniel was to have certain responsibilities, the final authority over family assets would remain with her husband. She stated, and I quote, "Trust only him, for he has carried the weight when others would not. He alone knows sacrifice." The words strike the air like thunder. My chest tightens, not from weakness, but from the rush of vindication. Margaret's voice, written in ink, stronger than Daniel's cruelty, reaches across a decade to shield me. Daniel's face drains of color. He stammers, "No. No, that's not possible." His eyes dart toward Claire, then back to Collins. "This doesn't mean anything. Old words, old papers." Collins lifts another sheet from the file. It also includes documentation of accounts deeds and holdings placed under her husband's name, assets that remain untouched. He pauses, letting the weight of the words settle. Assets Daniel cannot claim. The room erupts in whispers, faces turn toward me, some shocked, others nodding, as if the truth was always waiting. Henry. My old friend lets out a sharp laugh of disbelief. So he wasn't worthless after all, he says, his voice thick with satisfaction. Daniel's fury explodes. This is a lie. He doesn't deserve any of it. I'm the one who kept everything alive. His words tumble out, desperate, reckless. But no one listens now. The file lies open on the table, Margaret's words standing taller than Daniel's. I sit quietly, my hand still over Lily's, my heart pounding, but steady. This is not victory yet, the storm is still raging, but the tide has turned. Margaret's foresight, Collins's calm, the sealed envelope, they are the pillars holding me upright while Daniel crumbles. For the first time tonight, I allow myself to breathe deeply. The truth has spoken, but I know more revelations wait. The file is thick, and Collins is far from finished. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Collins doesn't stop after reading Margaret's words. He reaches deeper into the briefcase and pulls out another document, this one, thicker, folded carefully inside a protective sleeve. His movements are deliberate, almost ritualistic, and the anticipation tightens the room like a drawn bowstring. Daniel takes a half step forward, his hand outstretched. That's enough. You don't need to show them everything. His voice cracks, the veneer of confidence peeling away. Collins ignores him. He slides the sleeve free, revealing parchment-colored paper edges embossed with legal seals. He holds it up for all to see. This, he says, is the property deed. The words alone strike like lightning. The guests stir. Several lean forward so far their chairs creak. Claire gasps softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Daniel goes pale, then flushes crimson. No, that deed was transferred to me years ago. Everyone knows it. Collins lays the paper flat on the table, smoothing it with his hand. The embossed seal glints under the chandelier light, irrefutable. Not quite, Daniel. The deed you flaunt is void. This is the original, updated according to Margaret's wishes. The property remains under your father's name. The air leaves the room in a collective gasp. I feel my pulse in my ears, the beat of vindication thundering inside me. For years, Daniel treated the house as his possession, walking its halls like a king, locking doors to rooms I built with my own hands. Tonight, the truth wrests it back. Daniel lunges toward the table, but Henry, my old friend, rises and grips his arm. Sit down, boy, he growls. The authority in his voice is a shock even to me. Daniel jerks free, but he doesn't move closer. For the first time, he looks cornered. Collins continues unshaken. The deed includes provisions protecting not only the house but adjoining lands purchased decades ago. Margaret made certain that nothing could be quietly signed away. She knew her husband would need proof one day. I swallow hard, the weight of Margaret's foresight pressing against me. I remember when we bought that land, a modest patch by the river. She said it will mean more later than it does now. At the time I laughed, but tonight her wisdom rings louder than laughter ever could. Daniel's voice breaks into a shout. You can't do this. This is fraud. Collins raises an eyebrow. Fraud. This document has not left my possession in 10 years. Signed, notarized, sealed, and witnessed. Shall I read the signatures aloud? Daniel freezes. His lips tremble, but no words come. The silence that follows is heavier than his rage. Guests shift in their seats, their expressions transforming from doubt to judgment. Claire looks away ashamed. Lily squeezes my hand tighter, her small voice whispering, Grandma knew. I nod, my throat thick. Yes, Lily, she knew. I recall a quirky detail from a story Margaret once told me in some European towns. Families would hide deeds inside hollow church bells, believing the constant tolling would protect the truth from corruption. Tonight it feels as though Margaret's spirit hid ours in Collins's briefcase, ringing it only when the moment demanded. Daniel slams his fist against the table, rattling glasses. This doesn't change anything. I run everything now. Everyone knows I'm the one in charge, but even his own voice betrays him. It shakes thin and desperate. The guests see it. The tide has fully turned. Collins taps the deed lightly as if sealing its final word. No, Daniel. The documents say otherwise, and documents do not lie. The cake still sits untouched, candles melted down to crooked stubs. Their smoke curls upward like incense, carrying Margaret's justice into the room. I sit back, the weight of humiliation easing at last, though not gone. Tonight is not finished. The deed is only one piece of a greater storm. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The moment Collins's words settle, the room shatters. It begins with whispers small and sharp like cracks in ice. Then the murmurs swell into voices, voices into shouts, until the entire gathering is a storm of accusation and disbelief. "Did you hear that? The house isn't his," a cousin blurts, her voice high with shock. "He's been lying all these years," another relative adds, slamming a hand against the table. Claire's sister, seated near the back, leans forward with narrowed eyes. "So you paraded around like a king, Daniel, knowing none of it was yours?" Daniel's face burns crimson. He raises his hands as though to calm them, but his gestures only inflame. "You don't understand. I kept everything together. Without me, there would be nothing." Henry, my lifelong friend, stands, pointing a trembling finger at Daniel. "Without him." His voice cracks, but not from weakness, from rage. "Without your father, you wouldn't even have shoes on your feet. We all remember who worked his hands raw to put food on your table." The room erupts further. Chairs scrape against the floor. Guests lean over each other, voices overlapping. Some defend me, recalling memories of years past when I helped them, lent them tools, or fixed their roofs. Others shake their heads in disgust at Daniel, muttering that arrogance has rotted him from the inside. Claire buries her face in her hands. For once, she doesn't defend him. Her silence is louder than any confession. Daniel slams his palm against the table, rattling glasses. "Quiet," he bellows, but his voice is drowned in the uproar. The authority he once commanded evaporates like smoke. No one listens, no one fears him. I sit still, watching it all unravel. My humiliation lingers, but the weight is no longer mine alone. The shame he cast upon me has returned to him multiplied. Lily presses closer to me, frightened by the shouting. I stroke her hand gently, murmuring, "It's all right." Truth makes noise before it settles. I recall a peculiar superstition I once heard from a traveling merchant. When families argue loudest, it is said that ancestors gather above, listening to weigh the justice of their descendants. Tonight, I almost feel Margaret's presence, her watchful eyes, in every gust of raised voices, her steady hand keeping me calm. Daniel shouts over the din, his voice cracking. "He doesn't deserve it. He's old, weak. What good can he do with deeds or accounts? I built everything. It should be mine." His words silence the room for a moment, not because they are convincing, but because of the venom in them. The greed laid bare is undeniable. A cousin mutters he's lost his soul. Another whispers his own mother didn't trust him. The guests turn toward me now, their eyes softer, regretful. Some avoid my gaze, ashamed they once nodded along with Daniel's arrogance. Others look at me with something closer to reverence, as if they finally see the years of sacrifice that were always invisible under his shadow. Collins remains seated, composed, the open file before him like a judge's gavel. He doesn't need to shout. The documents speak louder than the uproar. Daniel, desperate, points at me. "Say something. Tell them I deserve it. Tell them you're nothing without me." His voice cracks at the edges, the plea hidden beneath his rage. But I do not rise. My silence hangs heavier than all their voices. My father once told me, when the crowd screams, the one who stays silent speaks loudest. Tonight, I finally understand. The uproar continues around us, but Daniel's power has vanished. His throne has turned to splinters, and though the storm rages, I feel a strange calm settle within me. The truth has broken through. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The uproar rolls like thunder through the room, voices clashing, chairs scraping. Daniel shouts, trying to claw back control, but his words drown in the storm he created. Just as the noise peaks, another voice rises, calm, steady, and unexpected. "Enough." The single word cuts through the chaos sharper than any shout. All heads turn. At the edge of the room, half hidden in the shadows near the doorway, stands a figure I hadn't noticed before. It's Mr. Alvarez, an old neighbor, a man who once worked side by side with me when Daniel was still a boy. His back is slightly stooped now, his hair thinned, but his voice carries the authority of someone who has lived too long to be ignored. Daniel stiffens. "What are you doing here?" His voice falters, revealing panic. Alvarez steps forward, leaning on his cane. "I was invited by Margaret years ago." His eyes glint with something that silences even the whispers. "She told me to come when the lawyer brought the file. She said I might be needed." The room freezes. Collins folds his hands calmly, as though this had always been part of the plan. I feel my breath catch. Margaret, even in death, foresaw tonight's unraveling with a clarity that chills me. Alvarez fixes his gaze on Daniel. "I was there the night your mother signed those papers. I watched her hand tremble as she sealed the envelope, and I heard her say, 'Daniel cannot be trusted. He must never know until it is too late.'" Gasps ripple through the room. Claire lowers her face into her palms, shoulders shaking. Lily clutches my hand, whispering, "Grandma knew." Daniel's face contorts. "You're lying." His voice cracks. "You're just an old man who barely remembers his own name." But Alvarez doesn't flinch. "I remember too well. I remember the night you tried to force your father's signature onto documents he never agreed to. I remember stopping you, and I remember Margaret's tears when she realized what her son had become." The words land like blows. The guests stare at Daniel, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some mutter prayers under their breath, others shake their heads in disgust. Daniel sputters, desperate. "That never happened. He's making it up. None of you should believe him." But Alvarez only lifts his cane, pointing it directly at him. "The truth doesn't need your permission. It has waited long enough." I feel my chest tighten, not with fear, but with vindication. For years I doubted myself, wondered if silence was weakness. Yet here stands a witness, someone outside the family who saw what I endured. His words are proof that Margaret and I weren't blind. We knew Daniel's darkness long before tonight. A hush falls over the room again. The shouting dies, replaced by a heavy silence, broken only by the ticking clock. Daniel's arrogance crumbles in the stillness. His hands tremble as he grips the back of a chair, his face pale. I remember an obscure saying my wife once loved. When the hidden witness speaks, the liar's mask falls. Tonight, Alvarez is that hidden witness, and Daniel's mask is cracking beyond repair. Claire finally lifts her head, her voice shaking. "Is it true, Daniel? Did you try to forge your father's signature?" Her question is not just suspicion, it's accusation. Daniel glares at her, but no words come. His silence damns him more than any denial could. The guests shift their judgment final. I see it in their faces: pity for me, disgust for him. The tide is no longer turning. It has turned completely. And yet I know this storm is not done. Alvarez has opened a door that cannot be closed. The truth is flooding in piece by piece. The worst is still waiting. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The silence after Alvarez's words is crushing. Daniel stands frozen, his face drained of color, the guests' eyes piercing him from every side. I think the night can break no further yet. Collins, ever composed, reaches once more into his briefcase. "This," he says calmly. Sliding out another sealed envelope is the second letter. Margaret left it with strict instructions: open only if Daniel denies the truth. The room stirs. The timing is almost prophetic. Daniel shakes his head violently. "No, she wouldn't. She couldn't have planned all this." His voice trembles, betraying fear more than anger. Collins places the envelope on the table, its wax seal unbroken. Margaret's handwriting looping across the front for the day. Denial blinds him. The words sting. She knew him too well. She knew this night would come. Claire gasps, her eyes filling with tears. She really thought of everything she whispers, almost to herself. Lily leans against me, her small voice barely audible. "Grandma's still here, isn't she, Grandpa?" I squeeze her hand. "Yes, Lily," in every word. Collins breaks the seal with the same deliberate care as before. The sound echoes through the room like the tearing of old wounds. He unfolds the letter and begins to read. "Daniel, if you are hearing this, it means you could not face yourself. You denied the truths written in your own actions. I saw the path you chose long ago. Pride over kindness, greed over love. I prayed you would turn back, but I knew denial would be your final weapon." The guests sit rigid, their breaths held as Collins continues. Daniel's lips tremble, but no words escape. "I write this not to shame you, but to protect the man who never wavered. Your father carried more than you will ever know. Every scar on his hands was a stone laid for you. And when you tried to strip him of even his dignity, I swore he would never stand alone." A sob breaks the silence. It comes from Claire. She covers her mouth, tears spilling through her fingers. Daniel turns to her, his face twisted in panic. "Don't listen. She's manipulating us from the graves." But Colin's steady voice drowns him out. "This letter is proof that your denial was foreseen. It is my witness from beyond, binding your words tonight to the truth I left behind. If you deny, let this letter speak where you cannot." The room feels as if Margaret herself has returned, her spirit weaving through the smoke of the melted candles, her voice trembling through every syllable. My chest aches, not from weakness, but from the power of her love still protecting me. I glance at Daniel. His face is ashen. For the first time, he looks small, the boy he once was when storms frightened him. His fists clench, but his eyes dart helplessly. The fortress of arrogance he built has collapsed. Alvarez nods solemnly. She knew Daniel. She always knew. A cousin mutters, Even from the grave, she saw him clearer than he sees himself. Daniel's rage flares one last time. This is manipulation. You can't believe words scribbled on paper. She's not here to prove it. His shout echoes desperate hollow. But I feel Margaret here more than I feel him. In the letter in Lily's trembling hand and Collins's calm and Alvarez's witness, she is everywhere. I think of an obscure belief Margaret once told me about in some villages. When someone wrote a final letter, it was said their soul lingered until the words were read aloud. Tonight, her soul lingers. She is in every corner of this room, stronger than Daniel's fury. Collins folds the letter with care and sets it beside the deed. The evidence speaks for itself, he says. No more denial can erase it. The guests nod, some whispering prayers, others shaking their heads at Daniel. The room feels united, no longer divided by doubt. I rest my hand on the table, steady, the weight of years finally lifting. Margaret's second letter has spoken the words I could not. My silence, once humiliating, is now my greatest strength. But I know this is not the end. Daniel's pride will not die quietly. The storm still has more to give. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Daniel's face twists, caught between rage and fear. His chest heaves and his hand trembles as it grips the back of a chair. For a moment, I almost see the boy he once was, Bortorst, terrified, lashing out because he doesn't know what else to do, but that boy is gone. In his place stands a man consumed by pride, about to shatter under the weight of truth. Enough, he roars, his voice cracking. He slams the chair onto the floor, the crash reverberating through the room like thunder. Lily flinches, clutching my arm. Guests gasp, some pushing back their chairs as though ready to flee. Claire buries her face in her hands again, but this time she doesn't cry. She trembles. Daniel paces, running his hands through his hair, eyes wild. You think some old papers, some fading letters mean anything? They don't. I built this family. I made us what we are. His words spill out fast, incoherent desperation wrapped in arrogance. Collins remains seated, unflinching. Alvarez leans heavier on his cane, his eyes narrowed. The guests exchange wary looks. The atmosphere has changed, no longer disbelief but dread. They see what I've always known. Daniel's pride is not strength, but poison. He points at me, finger shaking. And you, he spits. You sit there silent, smug, letting everyone think you're the victim. You're not. You're weak. You've always been weak. The words should cut me, but they no longer do. They fall flat, powerless against the letters, the deed, the witnesses. His shouts reveal more of his unraveling than my silence ever could. I recall a strange saying my wife once told me: when the mask breaks, the face beneath is uglier than the lie. Tonight, Daniel's mask has shattered, and what lies beneath is desperation, naked and raw. He grabs the wine bottle, slamming it onto the table so hard it nearly topples. Red spills across the documents like blood, but Collins calmly lifts them out of the way, untouched. Daniel's voice rises to a scream. You can't take this from me. You can't. It's mine. All of it is mine. Claire finally lifts her head, her voice trembling. Daniel, stop. Please. You're scaring everyone. He whirls on her, eyes blazing. Scaring them? They should be scared. They've lived off me for years. Every single one of them would have nothing without me. The guests recoil, offended, some muttering angrily. A cousin shouts back, without your father, you would have nothing. The room erupts again, but this time the voices are against Daniel, not for him. He grips the bottle tighter, his breathing ragged. For a heartbeat, I fear he might strike someone. The danger is real now, no longer just words. Lily clings to me, whispering, Grandpa, I'm scared. I hold her close, steadying her trembling hands. My heart hammers, not only from the fear of violence, but from the ache of watching my son sink so low. Daniel's voice breaks, no longer a roar, but a sob strangled in anger. Why? Why did she choose you? Why not me? I did everything. I deserved it. His words shatter into fragments. His rage has melted into something smaller, uglier, envy. The guests fall silent. His breakdown is no longer shocking. It is pitiful. I see him clearly now, as Margaret must have seen him when she wrote those letters, a man blinded by pride, trapped in denial, clawing at shadows. My silence is no longer weakness. It is the mirror he cannot bear to face. Daniel sinks into his chair, the bottle slipping from his hand, clattering harmlessly onto the floor. His shoulders heave, his head in his hands. The guests watch their judgment final. He is no longer the proud son who mocked me. He is a broken man, undone by his own arrogance. Yet I know this night is not finished. His collapse is not closure. It is the crack before the final reveal. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The room hangs heavy with Daniel's collapse. He sits slumped in his chair, face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking with rage and despair. The guests stare in uneasy silence. Claire doesn't reach for him. Lily clings to me tighter, her little hand trembling. It is Collins who breaks the stillness. He gathers the scattered papers with the patience of a surgeon, stacking them neatly before him. Then, adjusting his glasses, he says in a voice calm and clear, "The time has come to read the full account of Margaret's wishes." Every head turns toward him. Even Daniel lifts his face pale and damp with sweat. "No," he whispers hoarsely. "Don't." But Collins continues unshaken. He draws a final set of papers from the file, heavier than the others bound with ribbon. His fingers untie the knot. The rustle of parchment is the only sound in the room. This, he begins, is the final will and testament executed and notarized. Margaret insisted it be revealed only if her son's conduct proved unworthy. Tonight, that condition has been met. Daniel shoots to his feet, eyes wide, voice breaking. "You can't. I'm her son. She would never cut me out." Collins raises a hand, silencing him. "Sit down, Daniel. You've said enough." Daniel freezes. For the first time, he obeys, not out of respect, but out of fear. He lowers himself slowly back into his chair, trembling. Collins unfolds the document. His voice is steady, authoritative. Margaret's estate, including the house, the land, and the accounts tied to her name, is to remain under the sole authority of her husband. Upon his passing, distribution will follow his instructions, not Daniel's. A wave of gasps floods the room. Several relatives nod in grim satisfaction. Henry mutters justice at last. Daniel grips the table so hard his knuckles turn white. Lies, he spits. Forgery. But the word rings hollow. He knows, as we all do, that Collins would never risk his career or reputation on falsehood. Collins reads on. Furthermore, Margaret made special note of her granddaughter Lily, whom she described as the light who will remind him of love when all else grows dark. She asked that provisions be made for her education, her future, and her safety free from interference. Lily gasps softly and buries her face against my sleeve. My heart swells with both sorrow and pride. Margaret's foresight reached even here to the child who tonight became my silent ally. Daniel explodes. She chose her over me, over her own son. His voice breaks into a strangled shout. How could she? I was the heir. I deserved everything. Claire's voice trembles as she finally speaks. "No, Daniel, you don't deserve anything. Not after tonight." The words slice sharper than any lawyer's letter. The guests murmur louder, now emboldened. Some shake their heads. Others whisper judgments openly. The tide has not only turned, it has drowned him. Collins lays the will flat on the table. Margaret saw what you would become, Daniel, and she acted to protect her family. His gaze shifts to me. She trusted you above all. I feel tears sting my eyes. My silence breaks at last, not in words to Daniel, but in a whisper to the memory of my wife. You kept your promise, Margaret. Even now. Daniel lunges once more, desperate. "No, this can't be the end. I won't accept it." His voice is shrill, cracking into something childlike, pathetic. But it is the end, at least for him. The truth lies bare on the table, written in ink, sealed with law, carried by witnesses. His denial cannot erase it. The room is silent again, but this silence is different, not heavy with shame, heavy with truth. And I know deep in my bones the storm has reached its peak. The truth has been exposed. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. Daniel doesn't speak at first. His chest rises and falls too quickly, his lips parted, his eyes darting wildly as though searching for an escape that doesn't exist. The guests watch him in uneasy silence. Even the air feels heavy, the candles flickering low, their flames struggling like him to survive. Then with a sudden cry, he crumples back into his chair. His face twists, no longer proud, no longer arrogant, but desperate. "It isn't fair," he mutters, his voice hoarse, almost childlike. "I gave everything. I built everything. How could she choose him over me?" The words hit me harder than his earlier insults. Not because they're cruel, but because they're hollow, the sound of a man who realizes his throne was made of sand. Claire shifts in her chair, her hands trembling. She whispers, "Daniel," but doesn't reach for him. She's seen enough to know some wounds cannot be touched. Daniel buries his face in his hands. His shoulders shake, not with anger now, but with sobs he tries to choke back. "I did it all for her, for you, for this family," he stammers, though even he seems unconvinced. Why didn't she see that? I remain silent. There was a time when I might have reached across the table, offered comfort, but that time is gone. My silence is not cruelty. It is truth. The choices he made led him here. He must face them alone. The guests whisper among themselves, their tones no longer furious, but pitying. "He's lost someone," mutters. He doesn't even see himself. I remember a curious fact from a book I once read in ancient courts. When a guilty man broke down in tears, it was not seen as repentance, but as weakness, proof that he was defeated. Tonight, Daniel's collapse feels exactly that. Not redemption, not apology, just defeat. He lifts his head, his face streaked with tears. His voice is a rasp. Please, Father, tell them this isn't true. Tell them I deserve something. His eyes search mine wild with desperation. For a moment, I see the boy he once was begging for reassurance after a nightmare. But the boy grew into this man, and the nightmare is of his own making. Lily squeezes my hand tighter, whispering, "Don't let him trick you." Her voice steadies me. Out of the mouths of children comes the clearest truth. Daniel slams his fist weakly against the table, the sound dull, lacking the power it once held. "You can't do this to me," he chokes out. "You can't take it all away." Colin speaks calm and firm. "Nothing was taken from you, Daniel. It was never yours to begin with." The words crush him more than any document. His shoulders slump. His mouth opens, then closes again, no sound escaping. The proud son who mocked me hours ago now sits broken small, his face pale and damp. I think of an old superstition my grandmother used to tell. When a man's pride shatters, he becomes like glass sharp to touch, but hollow inside. Tonight, Daniel is that glass. Dangerous, fragile, empty. The guests avert their eyes. Some shake their heads, others sigh. What was once anger has turned to pity. The mighty image he built for himself lies in shards at his feet. I remain still, not triumphant, not vengeful, only weary. Humiliation cut me tonight, but watching my own son collapse under his greed cuts deeper. He lowers his head onto the table, his voice muffled. "I have nothing left." And in that moment, the room knows he is lost. Silence has its own way of speaking. For a long moment, the room is hushed except for Daniel's ragged breathing. His head rests on the table, his shoulders trembling, as though each sob is tearing him apart. Then one by one, the voices of the relatives rise, not in his defense, but in judgment. "This is shameful," mutters my cousin Eleanor, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "To speak to your father like that. And now this. Margaret was right not to trust you." Uncle Richard shakes his head. All those years he strutted around making us believe he carried the family. Lies. All lies. Someone near the back adds, "He always looked down on the rest of us. I suppose this is what pride buys in the end." The words fall like stones, each one striking Daniel lower into his chair. He doesn't lift his head. He cannot. Claire sits frozen, her hands clasped in her lap, her face pale. She doesn't speak, and that silence speaks louder than anything else. Even she cannot defend him anymore. "Henry," my old friend turns toward me. "You deserved better than this, old man," he says, his voice rough with both anger and compassion. "We all saw how hard you worked. Some of us never forgot." I swallow hard. The humiliation of earlier lingers, but now it is washed with something warmer vindication. For years I was the quiet shadow in Daniel's narrative, dismissed as weak, poor, irrelevant. Now the truth has cracked that mask and the family finally sees. Lily looks around the room with wide eyes, listening to every word. She leans closer, whispering, "They know the truth now, Grandpa." I nod, though my chest feels heavy. Vindication doesn't erase pain. It only lights it in a different color. Aunt Sylvia rises from her chair, her voice sharp. Margaret knew what she was doing. She saw what her son was turning into. I only wish she were here to see her foresight proven right. The guests murmur in agreement. Daniel flinches, his hands curling into fists against the tablecloth, but he doesn't raise his head. I remember an obscure belief I once read about in some villages. When a family condemned one of their own, they would turn their chairs slightly away as a sign of rejection. Tonight I watch it happen. One by one, relatives shift their seats, no longer facing Daniel directly. It's subtle, but devastating. A symbolic exile. Claire whispers faintly, "What have you done, Daniel?" But she doesn't reach for him. She knows the answer, and she knows touching him won't change it. Collins clears his throat, his calm voice resuming its steady rhythm. "The will and deed stand. The truth has been spoken, witnessed, and affirmed. What remains is how you, the family, will choose to live with it." The weight of his words settles over the room. I see nods, hear murmurs of agreement. Sympathy begins to turn toward me, now pats on my shoulder, whispered apologies for ever doubting me, quiet acknowledgments of what I endured. Henry grips my hand firmly. "You stood tall even when he tried to break you. That takes more strength than shouting ever could." I look at Daniel, still slumped, face hidden. My heart twists. He is my son, my blood, yet the room no longer sees him as heir but as betrayer. His fall is complete, witnessed by every relative present. The candles on the cake sputter out one by one until only smoke remains, curling upward like a final judgment. The birthday celebration has become a tribunal, and its verdict is clear. I breathe deeply, the weight of years pressing against my chest. Tonight has revealed more than shame or inheritance. It has revealed the heart of a son and the silence of a father who endured long enough for truth to surface. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The voices of my relatives soften then fade, until only the steady hush of the room remains. Daniel is a collapsed figure at the end of the table, his head bowed, his shoulders sagging, his pride scattered across the floor like shards of glass. For the first time all evening, no one speaks. I sit in silence, my hands folded in my lap. The weight of Margaret's letters, the deed, the will, all of it surrounds me like a shield. And in that shield, I finally feel something I had nearly forgotten: strength. It is not the strength of youth, of broad shoulders or calloused hands. It is the strength of endurance, of surviving betrayal without surrendering to bitterness, of holding dignity when others tried to strip it away. I glance at the untouched cake, its candles now melted to crooked stubs. Once it was a symbol of humiliation, standing untouched as Daniel mocked me. Now it feels different. It is proof that patience outlasts cruelty. The sweetness was never in the cake itself, but in what it witnessed. Lily leans against me, her small hand in mine. "You were strong tonight, Grandpa," she whispers. "You didn't even have to shout." Her words strike deeper than Daniel's insults ever could. She is right. I didn't need to roar or fight. Silence was my sword, patience my shield. I remember an obscure proverb Margaret once loved: "The loudest voice fades, the quietest strength endures." I never understood its full meaning until now. Tonight, my silence spoke louder than Daniel's rage. Daniel lifts his head at last. His eyes are bloodshot, his cheeks streaked with tears. "Father," his voice is hoarse, broken, "please, don't let them hate me. Don't let them take everything." The guests shift uncomfortably. Some shake their heads, others mutter that it is too late. Claire doesn't move to comfort him. She stares at him with the face of someone who has seen too much to believe in excuses. I meet his gaze. I do not speak. Words would be wasted now. My silence is heavier, truer. He breaks under it, his lips trembling, his eyes searching for mercy that has already slipped beyond his reach. I think of my father long gone. He once told me that a man's true strength is not measured by how many battles he wins, but by how long he can stand when the world tries to break him. Tonight I have stood. I have endured the storm, the insults, the humiliation, and I am still here. The relatives murmur, some nodding toward me, some whispering that Margaret was wise, that justice has been served. Their words reach my ears, but I do not bask in them. This is not triumph, it is survival. Daniel slumps again, his voice a whisper. I only wanted to be seen. And in that confession I hear the broken truth of him. His cruelty was born not only of greed, but of a hunger for recognition that pride twisted into poison. My heart aches, but my resolve does not falter. I close my eyes briefly, breathing in the thick air, scented with wax and spilled wine. The night has scarred me, but it has also given me clarity. I am not worthless. I never was. My silence has proved louder than his shouts, my endurance steadier than his schemes. When I open my eyes, the room is still watching me, waiting for words I do not give. Instead, I let the silence stretch heavy and dignified. Because silence tonight is my final strength. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The room is quieter now. The storm of voices, the shouting, the shattering of pride, all of it has passed. What remains is the heavy stillness that comes after thunder, when the air feels damp with memory and nothing is the same as before. Daniel sits slumped, broken, no longer the son who mocked me, but a man emptied of his own arrogance. Claire does not move to console him. The relatives avoid his gaze, their judgment made. For the first time in years, I'm not the one burdened with shame. Tonight, the truth has shifted and it lies heavily on his shoulders. I glance at the papers on the table, the deed, the will, Margaret's letters. They glow faintly under the chandelier as if her spirit lingers in the ink. She saw this night long before I did. She prepared the path, leaving behind words sharper than any blade. She kept her promise to me that I would never stand alone. The untouched cake sits in the center, its candles melted into puddles of wax. Once it was a symbol of humiliation. Now it is a reminder patience endures. The sweetness was never in the frosting, but in surviving long enough to taste it. The guests rise slowly, some approaching me with gentle hands on my shoulder. Quiet apologies, whispered acknowledgments of my years of sacrifice. Henry clasps my hand firmly. She was right to trust you, he says. We all see that now. I nod though my throat tightens. Vindication feels heavy, not light, because what does it mean to win when the cost is a son lost to pride? Lily looks up at me, her eyes wide. Grandpa? She says softly, you didn't need to fight. You were strong just by being you. Her words pierce me tender and true. I squeeze her hand. Strength, I whisper, is not in how loud you shout, but in how long you stand. I remember an obscure belief Margaret once shared. When the storm passes, count not the losses but the lessons. Tonight the losses are clear. A son's love twisted, a family fractured. But the lessons are clearer still. Dignity matters more than wealth. Silence carries its own power, and love leaves traces strong enough to outlast betrayal. I look at Daniel one last time. He does not meet my gaze. His pride has shattered, his voice silenced. Part of me aches for him, but forgiveness is not ready yet. It may never come fully, but I do not hate him. I only mourn the son I once knew, the boy who once promised to build me a house long before he decided to tear mine apart. The guests begin to leave, their whispers fading down the hallway. The candles are out. The wine spilled, the letters folded carefully back into Collins's case. The night is over, but its echo will remain. I rise slowly, my body heavy but steady. Lily walks at my side, her hand small in mine. For her I will endure. For her I will remain strong. For her I will pass down the truth that love outlasts pride and dignity survives even the harshest storms. I pause by the door, glancing back at the table where everything happened. Thank you, Margaret, I whisper into the silence. You carried me even from beyond. And in the stillness of the empty room, I almost feel her there, her perfume faint, her presence soft, her promise kept. This story is not about inheritance, not about papers or deeds. It is about the strength to endure the silence that speaks louder than cruelty, and the truth that even betrayal cannot bury love forever. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.